Death took a holiday for the past decade or so, but he's back, and in full force to hunt down a bunch of pesky survivors in Final Destination Bloodlines. This one is a slightly new spin on the formula, but we're really just here for the elaborate kills, so let's see if it delivers the goods. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello.
This is a horror movie podcast, and we're being chased by death, because today we discuss Final Destination Bloodlines, or from here on out, Final Destination 6, as I'm probably going to call it 90% of the time. But that, we're here. It's been over a decade since 5. For some reason, it took them so long to get to this, but here we are. We knew it was coming for a while. In fact, we thought it was coming last year, and we watched all the other ones in preparation for it. So you can check out our reviews of those.
Oh, that's right, huh?
Yeah, that was a while ago we did that.
I forgot that was last year.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I remember we did it recently. I forgot it was because it's supposed to come out last year.
Yep, that was why. We were worried that we would be behind, and then we ended up being like a year ahead. So it is what it is, but we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch, and of course you can support the show and help keep it coming over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get exclusive episodes and all that kind of stuff, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, let's get into it. So I mean, premise-wise, it's weird to try and give a premise to like a sixth movie in a franchise that has a pretty, consistent formula. Obviously, there's a little bit of a spin in this one because of the Bloodlines part of it, but it's still a Final Destination movie. It's not completely reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination.
It's like the same gimmick, but a slightly different premise.
Yeah, there you go. That's a way to put it. So I'll save any kind of plot description, but just Death's hunting a group of people. They're dying one by one in weird mousetrap-esque convoluted ways, which are hopefully entertaining. That's what you're wanting from Final Destination. So without further ado, Tim, what did you think of Final Destination Bloodlines?
So for me, it was kind of a mixed bag. There are things that I liked, and there's some stuff I'm positive on. I do think there's some stuff that I'm a little negative, or that I have some nitpicks on. But I mean, overall, I didn't hate the movie. Like, I had enough fun with it. It wasn't like I was kind of just hoping for something, really big and dumb, and kind of harkening back to the other Final Destination movies where it's just like, all right, yeah, let's not get like too bogged down with like, stories or characters or try to be too serious. Let's just have these really crazy kills and stuff. And I do think the strength in the movie, or at least for me, was that I found a lot of the like setups for the kills to be pretty fun. I think there's some pretty good set pieces in here, some pretty surprising moments. Big complaint for me though is so much of it is so CGI that a lot of the times, even when it's like, okay, this is a pretty fun death, but just the CGI of it all kind of deflates it for me. Which I mean, admittedly, it'd be hard to do a lot of this stuff practically, and I know it's not like the biggest budget movie, so I understand that you do what you got to do, but it kind of takes it out a bit for me. There was some stuff I like though. Like I do like the little bit of a spin that it got. Like I did find myself actually being pretty interested in the story at first, and then I feel like the movie does kind of drag for a bit, and I'm getting like a little less interested, by the second half or so. It does kind of have that problem where, I feel like the main characters are pretty boring. Basically the kind of mother's side of the family that we're following, I found pretty dull, and then basically like all the cousins and stuff were like the much more interesting characters that you wanted to follow. So yeah, there were little bits where it kind of like dipped for me, and then I do have like some like silly nitpicks, but I guess kind of have to wait for like spoilers to get into those.
Sure.
I know it's not the kind of movie where you're supposed to like overthink stuff, but there was definitely like a lot of parts where I'm like, oh, come on, I don't think that would happen, or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit more positive on it than you are. I like this movie reviewed shockingly well. Like the Rotten Tomatoes score was like way up in the sky, and like 90% or something like that, and like double of like what most of the other entries in the franchise have had. Which is not to say that I went in expecting it to be twice as good as even the best Final Destination movie. I think that would have been a silly expectation. I think it maybe speaks more to the idea that there's a lot more fans now that review movies that grew up and kind of like the silliness of Final Destination and are more willing to like meet it on its own terms, as opposed to like maybe the, I don't know, we'll call it the snobbery of like maybe the movie critics at the time when some of the better ones were coming out. But I do think this is very solid. I think it does this thing where it rides a line where it's trying to, because you said you were hoping it would go back and sort of be maybe more like the ones that weren't taking themselves too seriously. And I think at times it is that. I think it kind of does a weird thing where it does both. There's like a plot that actually is better written than it probably has any right to be, that feels like it's trying to take itself somewhat seriously, but it's also willing to have silly deaths and even like silly payoffs to some of the more serious things. So it's kind of riding the lightning and trying to work for anyone who's liked these movies in the past. And I think it succeeds for the most part. My biggest critique, honestly, like every Final Destination movie, the last act's the worst part, because fundamentally, ending one of these movies is always kind of weird, because like we're here for like the build-ups to the kills, and once we get to the point where there's a few characters left and they're trying to like figure out how to cheat it or how to win and beat death, that's always the weakest part, because it's always a just for and this is no spoilers for this movie, but it's always a case of either we're returning to something that was mentioned in a previous movie and we've already done it, or we've come up with a new rule that might save them and escape death. But there's always that feeling that it doesn't matter, because these movies love to do the thing in the last scene where they go, oh, nah, they didn't really win. That's still coming for them, cut to credits. Like so many of them have ended that way. And regardless of where this one was going to go, I was always going to have that feeling in the back of my head as it was building up to it. So I think the last like 20-30 minutes is the weakest part of the movie. But I did really like most of what came before that. I kind of get the complaint like with like so much of it being CG, but I also think that they're so wacky that I don't know how you could possibly do most of them without CG, because they're so ridiculous and over the top. I like the disaster at the start. You know, that's a big part of Final Destination. I really enjoyed the setting of that. I think it's up there. I think it beats several of the other ones anyway. Maybe not 2, but like it beats 1, it beats 4, it beats 3's opening disaster. 5, I'd have to see 5 again, because 5 had the big bridge stuff, which had some fun in it. But
I was kind of trying to rank them in my head, and I feel like I don't remember anything about 5 at all.
I remember, I think the most memorable thing about 5, other than the gymnast death, is the weird little twist they have at the end, which I won't spoil just in case. But
right, yeah.
But I like 5 is a dumb movie, but it's probably, at least it was my second favorite before. It may not be now. 6 may be my second favorite now. So I think I like it more than you do.
I'd have to think a bit harder if I was going to do like an official ranking, but for me, it's kind of like in the middle right now. Like it'd probably be about like 3 or so for me. In terms of the other movies, which is like, yeah, it has some good stuff here, and then some stuff that didn't like completely work. But
yeah, I mean, I when I was doing rankings there, I was talking just about the opening disasters. So I was just ranking those.
Opening.
As opposed to the old movies.
Gotcha.
Just to be clear.
Okay.
Because like 3's opening is definitely a more fun opening than 4. 4's got a really like lame opening. But I think 4, although the internet hates 4, the internet does not agree with us on this, but 4 is actually kind of dumb and entertaining, I think. But that's whatever. But the opening's definitely weak sauce. Probably the weakest aside from the first one, which didn't really like. The one obviously had the build up to the plane thing, but it wasn't the same as the later ones, where it was like, here's this chain reaction of all this death happening back to back and all the absurdity of it. And I had a good time. There was characters that I thought wouldn't be that likable that ended up being kind of likable, which is nice. I found myself, thinking, no, I mean, the characters aren't amazing, but I found myself like thinking, you know what? Compared to the other ones that take themselves seriously, if you compare the characters in this to say like 3, like these characters are like way above. They're night and day better than the characters in 3. And I don't know, you know, why that is, other than just maybe they're just a little bit better written, maybe a little bit better cast. I don't know. Maybe the family dynamic's just a little bit different to like the usual group of like similar age characters that we typically get. I don't know. But I appreciate that. And then just that, we'll talk about this more in spoilers, obviously, but there's kind of like a really nice like send-off to Tony Todd in this movie, which is also quite sweet. And I mean, the director's confirmed that the last part of his scene is like not scripted. He just basically said what he wanted to say to the camera. And it's like Tony Todd saying goodbye to horror fans. And you could feel it in the moment. So it's that's kind of sweet too. So yeah, I had a good time. I do think the last like 20-30 minutes is kind of weak, but all of them have that. Even 2, because 2 is my favorite one. I love Final Destination 2, but by far the worst part of it's the last like 20 or so minutes.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I don't know if it's just something with the formula where it's just, it's hard to maybe have some big over the top set piece while also trying to, resolve the plot and, have some type of resolution for the characters or something. I guess it's just kind of hard to do, but yeah, none of the movies really seem to have anything like that satisfying.
I think it's because the appeal of the movies mostly is like the build up to the deaths. So once we get to the point where the characters are trying to avoid the death, it's like, no, I don't want them to avoid the death. I want the death to happen. So this is not the fun part. I think what's weird though is this movie kind of sets something up that I thought would be good to make the final act entertaining, despite the fact that there might be no deaths. However, they ended up not really using it that much, surprisingly. So, but I'll talk about that more in spoilers. But there was something I thought they were going to use to make it, because in a slasher movie you could say like, oh, isn't there the same problem? But not really, because while the deaths stop when we get to the final girl and it's just about chasing the final girl and her trying to survive, typically, again just to follow the typical slasher formula, there's like a new kind of fun to have there though, because the final girl's like, there's a lot of suspense in the chase and there's a lot of like near misses and like trying to but for whatever reason, Final Destination, with death hunting down people in these like weird elaborate ways, like for some reason the final acts and like the death not winning is never remotely entertaining or fun compared to the rest of the movie, whereas the final chase in Halloween is arguably the best part of the movie, despite the fact that obviously Laurie's not going to get killed. You're kind of rooting for her to survive, right?
And also like there potentially is like still going to be a death because they'll kill the slasher or the villain or whatever. Like you can't really kill death here.
Very good point. Yeah, the killer himself can be the victim at the end. That's right. So we can still get like a payoff to the suspense. So it's it's just like it's like the one kink in the formula. Like I think this is a very reusable formula where I'm like, yeah, give me one of these every 3 or 4 years. I'll probably enjoy them as long as you keep giving me weird deaths. But they do have this flaw that the final acts are always the least interesting part, and I think that's true of pretty much all of them to some extent, including the ones that I like more. So it is what it is. The middle's always the best part usually. Well, unless the opening disaster is really good, but I think a lot of the good deaths tend to be in the middle of the movie, because that's like, we've had the disaster, we've had a little bit of build up, and then they start dying one by one. So that middle chunk where there's a bunch of them dying and cool scenes is always the best part. I will say this movie also plays with expectations a little bit in a fun way. That's kind of where some of the sense of humor comes from, is the idea of like, misdirecting the audience and kind of like having things come back in different ways. I quite appreciated. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about a lot of stuff without getting into spoilers. So.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, okay, well, without spoilers, I think it's not a spoiler to say that the opening disaster is set in a different time period. It's like it's like the 60s or something like that. How did you feel about getting a Final Destination disaster in a older like era?
Actually, I quite enjoyed that. And I was listening to a podcast who's someone was saying that, I forget if it was a director or someone else had a proof of concept thing that they put like online about doing a Final Destination like set in like the Middle Ages or something, which I guess maybe it's kind of like similar to the Predator thing where, like you're saying, yeah, like every 3 or 4 years, like, yeah, I'd be totally okay with getting this, but then also like, oh yes, like you could totally set it in like different eras or countries and stuff. Like I feel like there's a lot of like, fun, interesting stuff you could do there. But I quite like the opening. And this one is actually pretty interesting because it actually plays on like kind of a fear that I have, which
okay.
again, so I mean I guess we'll get that into that more in like spoilers. I could talk about that, but it was, I mean, I thought generally it was well done, but then also it kind of had like an extra little pop for me because I was like, oh yeah, this is like a kind of a thing that I think about a lot.
I also felt like they were doing something, because if I remember correctly, I won't say what it is, because again, just to not spoil it yet, but there was something that they wanted to do in 2. Now, obviously, this is not the same people who made 2, but it felt like there was something in this that was like, hey, they wouldn't let them do it in 2, so we did it in this one, because I guess, 20 plus years later, we're allowed to. Which is actually the thing, so this movie has, like, the main cast are, like, college age, give or take, right? And there's like a younger brother character, and then there's like the older generation. And the older generation, I was kind of like having this weird realization that it's not quite the age necessarily. They're a little bit older than this still, but they're very, very close to the age that the characters in the first movie would be now. Like they're a little bit older, but it's not far off. And I was sort of thinking, oh, like, are they going to do something with the fact that, like, I don't know. I wasn't sure if they were going to try and play with that in some way and be like, oh, hey, these like adult like parent characters were all about 20 in 1999, 2000, give or take. I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, again, yeah, it's something more for spoilers, but I do have a question where I was trying to. I wasn't quite sure if they're trying to make some connections to the other films, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, there's a couple of cheeky Easter eggs rather than necessarily story connections, which I appreciated actually. It's kind of fun. It was because it's more like just poking the audience a little bit and saying, "Hey, remember that death from the other movie? Oh, it'd be funny if that happened again, wouldn't it?" Kind of thing. So yeah, in fact, one of them is very smart. Because they kind of put it in the trailer to a point, this little Easter egg or like connection to a previous movie, and I remember seeing it in the trailer, and I was hopeful from the trailer, but this little moment did make me worry because I'm like, wait, they're doing that again, but they play it, like you don't see the whole bit in the trailer. In the movie, there's more context, and you realize that they're kind of playing with it a little bit and having fun. So I appreciate that as well. So. Anyway, yeah, we do have to go into spoilers really to get talking about it, but it sounds like I'm fairly positive, and I obviously there's faults that again a lot of these movies have, but I do think it's maybe second best in the series, maybe third best. It's kind of in that kind of range for me, but I am someone who puts like 3 last and 1 second last, and I know that there's parts of the internet who feel the opposite and think those are the best 2, so. Your mileage may vary depending on what type of Final Destination fan you are.
No, I mean, I'm about the same, in terms of my ranking. But I mean, maybe a little less positive, but I mean, I'd still say it's worth watching. It just wasn't like a grand slam, for me. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, this was exactly what I wanted. I was like, okay, like fun stuff, but I still have some problems and issues.
Yeah, I mean, so do I. Kinda. I don't know. I just don't think. Like, I don't know what a grand slam of a new Final Destination is. I guess I don't know if there is like a level of Final Destination that would make me feel that level of like praise. So I guess with my, not to say that you had unreasonable expectations, but I think I had reasonable expectations, and I came out quite satisfied based on those.
I mean, I was pretty hyped going into this. Like, I mean, I wasn't expecting something that was going to be a 10 out of 10, but like going into it, I was expecting to have something that was going to be like, just a lot of dumb fun. And there's definitely dumb fun in it, but there were also parts like slowed down for me. There were some characters that, I wasn't as interested in. And, and again, like, I know it can't be helped, but the CGI just, took me out of it, from time to time. And, again, I can't blame the movie with it because, like you said, like, okay, how are you going to do that opening scene?
Oh yeah,
like there really isn't. Like there's a way. Like, so I totally get it, but also I can't help being like, like a little deflated when it's just like seeing all that like CGI blood and stuff here and there or whatever.
Yeah, maybe a bit of real blood mixed in with the CG would have went a long way to just like blend things a bit better. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, maybe another critique you give it is that it's an hour like 50. It's the longest of the movies, I think. So maybe it could have been shaved down, maybe even just by 10 minutes, just to make it a bit tighter. Would have been nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So spoilers for Final Destination Bloodlines. You have been warned. We're going to get into it. So we'll start with the disaster. It's the obvious place to start with Final Destination.
Opening.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me though, I guess, coming to this movie is like how much I sort of realized as I was watching it, how much fun I'm having watching one for the first time and not knowing, like, because the whole thing with the deaths is that here's a little thing here, here's a little thing there. Oh, which thing's going to cause it? What's finally going to be the method of death? I really like them playing with that, and I think this movie does it fairly well. And so it was just nice experience, and even the opening when it's like, so it's in the 60s and you've got Stargirl with her boyfriend in the car, and they're driving.
Stargirl.
It's Stargirl from the TV show. Yeah, I instantly I'm like, oh, that's her. That's Courtney. But yeah.
I completely forgot there was a Stargirl TV show.
That's fair. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten. It was actually surprisingly decent, but it's also not must see by any means. So like he's taking her somewhere as a surprise for dinner. She's all dressed up. And it ends up being this new raised restaurant, this spaced needle tower type place, right? With the you all know what I'm talking about. Like, you think of Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Think of the tower in Seattle. So one of those. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting because it's kind of like, it feels a little retro future in a way. Not obviously these sort of towers do exist, but it feels a little bit like, oh, a clean new fancy tower that looks like this feels kind of futuristic for the time period. I don't know. I was getting kind of like, I don't know, vibes from it.
It's definitely something that would have been like very fancy in the 60s.
Oh yeah. But obviously she's going, like, it's got all the little touches where like every song that's playing on the radio in some ways hinting what's going to happen. Yeah. Like Rain of Fire. I think later on when people start dropping out, the guys at the bottom, the valets, are listening to the radio and it's like raindrops keep falling on my head, and just other things like that are like, hey, we're poking fun and all that. And she's getting kind of nervous. She's starting to get like bad vibes about what's going on, and and I think that's the other good thing about the opening of Final Destination movies is that you get to see a bunch of people die, and then you get to see most of them die again. That's the beauty of the franchise. It's twice the kills for your money, everyone. So what a savings! What a savings!
Well, I mean, I guess not really in this movie. But
true, yeah, because this one's unique. Instead of like flashing to the start of the scene and having to go through it again, which I was still expecting. Well, they still kind of do that because she still has to. Well, no, actually, they don't. We see it later. Later on, when she goes to talk to the old version of Stargirl, what's her name, Iris. When she goes to speak to her, she kind of tells us what really happened, and that's when we get when time went back, and this is how she like stopped things and saved people. We get it, but we get it later. Whereas when it ends and she dies at the end of the big disaster, like it normally happens, instead of it snapping to her, kind of like coming out of the vision, it snaps to her granddaughter, like kind of like waking up in college, being like, "Whoa!" Like So, and that's kind of how the plot gets going. But which is different. I was like, oh, that's interesting. This is obviously it's tying into the name of the movie, but it's like, okay, this is a little twist on how we start these movies off. So that's okay. Which
and I think it's actually like a pretty like smart idea, like because ultimately, I guess skipping ahead a little bit, but like ultimately it becomes like, she saved all these people, So it's like, okay, it's not like death is just coming after her. Now it's coming after all these people that were supposed to die. And then since it's been so long, it's like going after these generations of families that shouldn't have existed. So I actually think that's a pretty clever like idea for, you know, a franchise that is pretty formulaic at this point. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I was shocked that they didn't eventually reveal that some of the previous movies were part of the lineage. Like, I was so sure they were going to do it.
So that was kind of my question. At one point, they're like skipping through, you know, the like big crazy book that she wrote, and like they have all these things in it, like an airplane crash and like a log truck and stuff. And then part of me was kind of wondering, like, oh, are they trying to say that like all the people that she rescued, like eventually were people that like died in these accidents, and like that's how like the movies are tied together or something? Because I don't know, I thought it was like weird that, you know, she would just randomly have those events in her notebook or whatever. But
I think you could read it as that, and the movie just doesn't go out of its way to tell you, and it's there for you to kind of like put together yourself. I think you could also read it though as she's just like paying attention to any other big accidents where all the survivors die afterwards, because it clearly fits the bill of everything that's like happened. But it does this new thing where it's going down the family tree, and it's going down it in a very specific order where it completes one branch before it goes to the other split off branch. So we get like which is actually one of the little critiques I had, is that when eventually the main character, Stephanie, the granddaughter, when she's like got this book and she's got all this stuff and she's trying to explain it to the family, and she puts the tree up showing like all these like freak deaths and all that, she basically just immediately jumps to, and it's going to do it in this order where it's going to go through like dad's side of the family first, or like, you know, the other side of the family before it goes to my side of the family. And I'm like, why do you know it'll do that? I mean, I guess you could say that because all the other like families that have been killed already over the decades, there may be the patterns there to look at. But she never says that, so I immediately went, wait, how do you know it's going to be that order though? Like, what? Because I would have thought the natural order would be like take everyone out in the same generation and then go down to the next generation. Like, so I would think both the mum and the uncle would go first, right? Because the uncle, you know, he dies. Right. I would think it would go to the mum then, and then it would go down to this like generation of grandkids. But no, it's the uncle, then his kids, and then it'll go to the mum and then her kids. Which, it's not a big deal. Like, I'm saying a lot here as if it's a big deal. It's not. It really doesn't matter that much. It can be whatever they want to say it is, but it's just I was like, that's not the way I would have instinctually said it would happen. But whatever. It's fine. Anyway, the opening disaster. We have to talk about what happens here. So Stargirl gets proposed to, which distracts her from all her little nervous bits and whatnot. There's a bit of character building here.
They go to this restaurant, and it's like, again, it's however, you know, a couple of miles like up into the air, and you have to take this long elevator to get there. And like she's like excited to be there, but also like instantly kind of nervous. And like I was saying before, like this is kind of hitting home for me because like I'm not like necessarily afraid of like heights or anything, but I do have like a weird like fear or like I don't know, just these kind of intrusive thoughts about like falling like through floors whenever I'm in like a really tall building or something. Like it's not like I can't go there or I get paralyzed by fear, but like whenever I'm like really high up in a building, I'm always kind of like, oh, like what would just happen if like the floor just collapsed and I just like fell through or whatever.
Yeah, they play with that here really well, where you've got like the dance floors on glass, like over, like, you know, when it's out in the saucer, so it's like I
couldn't do that.
Yeah, you can just see down, but you can see them doing. Yeah. They've got the singer doing the "You Make Me Want to Shout," and the dance audience are all like screaming "shout," and they're all stomping their feet, and you can see the cracks starting to form, and I'm like, this is actually a pretty good build up to like this happening, where it's all going to just like, and yeah, when it happens, it's quite satisfying, where a bunch of them just go whoosh and just fall through the floor. And of course, when the boyfriend, and he's by that point he's the fiance because he's proposed and she said yes. When he falls, we get one of my favorite like gimmicks in horror movies, and it's happened a couple of times in Final Destination movies, is that someone drops from a large height, but they hit off like a metal beam or something on the way down. You get the ragdoll of them going poosh, and then so they're already dead before they even get to the ground. I love that gimmick. I love it. It's so satisfying.
I thought there was kind of like a funny line too when they're like riding up in the elevator and like the elevator guy operator is like giving all these facts about the restaurant. And he's like, it was like completed 5 months ahead of schedule. And like your star girl's just kind of like, oh, is that a good thing? Like,
yeah, is that a good thing? That sounds like you rushed it a little bit, maybe. I don't know. This sounds kind of bad. Yeah. There's a lot of build up though, because there's a whole thing where there's this really annoying little kid who's like just being a little shit, and he's like throwing pennies off the side of the balcony, and the security guard's like, that could kill someone if it lands in their head. Let's not do that. And he acts all nice, but he does it anyway. And it ends up being the penny that like gets into the ventilation system that causes other problems. So there's multiple things happening that's building up over the course of the setup of this. But I do love how chaotic it gets though, because almost immediately, once like a bunch of them fall through the glass floor, and he's dangling on and he falls to his death. There's a woman who just like walks into like one of those like someone's like cooking something in a pan with a big flame, right?
Like
intentionally. yeah, something like that. And this woman just erupts in fire. Like she's immediately just running around on fire, and I was laughing so hard. I'm like, this was the moment where I'm like, okay, this movie's doing what I want it to do. It's got the goods. It's doing the silly stuff. It's doing complete chaos. And there's probably a few, because we saw this a couple of days ago. Tim, if you can't tell from the coughing, he is a little bit sick still, so we had to delay this recording a couple of days, so forgive me if I'm maybe forgetting a couple of details in the middle of the chaos here, because there was a lot of good things going on. The other big thing towards the end though was when she herself, Stargirl, is dangling off and she falls down. Because by this point, by the end of the scene, like the saucer part of this restaurant at the top has like one half of it's fallen off, and then the other half kind of falls off as well, and she ends up falling so that she's held up entirely by her engagement ring, which is like between two like bits of like rebar like sticking out of concrete. And I was thinking that must be really sore if that was holding your entire body weight. Right, and then of course it does the thing where the entire skin of the finger just rips off and she falls to her death, and I'm like, oh, that's nasty. I love it. So good fun. The other thing though, of course, is that when they're trying to get down the stairs, because I was actually thinking, is there stairs to this? Because it looks like that central tower is only big enough for the elevator. I was like, that doesn't seem very safe. But they've got stairs. They try and go down it, but there's an explosion or whatever, and it takes out the stairs and kills a bunch of people. But the kid, the little shit, he does manage to get down, and just so he doesn't get away with it, before the end of the disaster, you see him coming out the bottom, like the entrance, and he's like, whoa, I made it. And then just at that moment, the grand piano that was upstairs, that already hit a woman off the thing, she gets hit in the face with the piano. This piano lands on this kid and splats him. And I think, back in Final Destination 2, there was a whole thing with the supposed teenager who went to the dentist who dies with the pane of glass landing on him. I think originally that was meant to be a much younger child, but the studio said no, don't do it to a kid. This felt like it was like, no, we can do this. This is a little shithead. We're going to kill him with a giant piano.
I think kudos to the filmmakers. They did such a good job of making you hate him.
Oh yeah.
That, I saw this Sunday night in a packed theater. I think it's a small theater, but I do think it was pretty much filled out, and that got such a huge reaction from the crowd. Like everyone was so happy when this kid died.
Yeah, it's just good stuff. And then of course one important plot beat to mention here, just before we move on, is that there's it reveals that she's pregnant, right? So she has a little moment where she's getting a little bit queasy, and this one of the singers on stage like notices it and says, hey, how many months are you? And she kind of like denies it at first, and then admits, oh, maybe a month, like, it's not far along. But this woman has a child, right? And the child's there as well, notably a black child. And this is important because this is going to turn out to be Tony Todd's character later. So he himself has been chased, but this is why he knows so much about death, is because he's been part of this tree of people that death's been coming after. And because he was the last one that should have died, pretty much, it'll be coming for him after the main family tree of the movie's been killed, which actually ended up working out really nicely. I don't know if you noticed this in the opening or the closing like titles, but it's like the sort of the animation as the names are coming up, it's like doing the tree of the red tape and like the different newspapers of all the deaths. The end of the titles, and the red line finishes, it comes up saying "in loving memory of Tony Todd." I thought that was kind of neat that his character technically was supposed to like be got by death after this whole family was wiped out, because he would have been next on the list. So they kind of like gave him the dedication there. It almost sounds a little bit morbid, but it's actually kind of sweet. It's like,
no, definitely,
he went last. I don't know. I kind of like that. It was a nice touch. Anyway,
yeah. No, and I mean, we'll get into that more like when we get to his scene. But,
yes.
Yeah, I do think that's nice. Another good death in this opening was you had like that annoying kind of like hoity-toity rich guy like from earlier, who is trying to get into the elevator at one point, and then like he kind of like crams himself in, and it's already like filled to capacity, and then it like comes down, and it kind of like, I mean, does it cut him in half or just kind of like drag his like skin or something?
Oh yeah, so he gets caught in the doors. I'm glad you reminded me of this. And then the elevator obviously falls, and he ends up getting just kind of, I don't know, like I don't know if chopped in half's even the right word. It's more like he's a bag of bones at the end. I don't know. I'd have to see it again.
Yeah, like it's almost like, I don't know, like the skin came off or something. It was just like, but it was a good effect.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like he got chopped in half to an extent, but when the elevator went down, it pulled out like a bunch of the innards of the half that was still up there. So you get like kind of like a sort of baggy like half of his body. I don't know. It was, that was a good bit. Yeah, I want to say that was the concierge who was denying the couple a seat.
Yeah,
that was that guy. Yeah.
Who like obviously was like being like a dick and stuff. Because they're actually like technically not even supposed to be there, because like he kind of seemed to have an in with this guy that worked there, the Stargirl's husband or boyfriend. But when they get there, the concierge is like, "Oh no, like we're booked to capacity, and that guy you said you had an in with was fired this morning, so please get out of here." So it's like, yeah, they're not even like supposed to actually be there.
Yeah, and honestly, they get kind of likable, because the way she just kind of takes it in her stride and says, "Let's just go to the bar and pretend that we're meant to be here," and they seem to be having a good time, regardless of the fact that they can't get a table to actually, have dinner. It makes them kind of endearing, to the point where I'm like, okay, she's kind of likable. I'm kind of curious. And obviously, it's almost a shame she isn't the main character after this, because they made her pretty likable. But it is what it is. But we skip ahead, of course, to present day. And Stephanie is the granddaughter of this character, Iris, and she is kind of struggling in college because she's been plagued with the nightmare of this disaster. And she knows it's weird. She's like, this never happened, but I think this woman in my dream is my grandmother. This is very odd. But because she gets put on academic probation, she goes home, meets her dad, meets her younger teenage brother, Charlie, who's kind of your typical quiet, doesn't want to talk to you kind of teenager. Well, at least with her anyway. So it turns out that they've got like the extended family, the cousins as they call them, live close by, walking distance. And that's where, her uncle, his wife, and their 3 kids, who are all about college or so aged as well, all live. So we get this kind of extended cast of characters. And it does an okay job of setting up, like, okay, her and her brother used to be close, but it's gotten kind of cold since she left for college. She seems to be quite close to the cousins now. The girl cousin, what's her name, Julia, is giving him dating advice. There's the one guy who's, I'll call him the tattoo guy, basically, or the piercing guy.
Yeah.
His name is Eric. I thought he was going to be really annoying at first. He ended up being kind of entertaining, if I'm honest. He kind of won me over as time went on.
Yeah, I think for most people, he's going to be the standout. He has like a lot of funny lines and jokes and just crazy stuff that happens to him. So, and just like visually speaking, he's easier to remember because it's like, oh, he's standing out from the rest of the people that kind of just look very plain. I did think it was kind of weird that like, I don't know, like the family kind of seems to hate her, which I'm like, wait, like, what did she do that's so bad? It just sounds like she kind of went to college and maybe has been a little busy to, like, keep in touch. But, like, I mean, that's kind of what happens, like, when you go to school. Like, I mean, I don't know if she's just like cuts all communication off with him or whatever, but like I don't know, like I kind of wanted to be like, hey, give her a break, like at some points when they're just like, oh yeah, like you ran away from us, like just like mom or whatever. And it's like, it doesn't really sound like she did. It sounds like she just went to school. I don't know.
Well, I think it's mainly the brother. I think the others only get kind of weird about her when she starts asking about the grandmother and this like incident, because that makes like the dad and like the uncle, like their eyes like go like, oh no, don't ask about that. Like, oh no, you don't have to. Don't worry about your grandmother. She's crazy. So leave that alone.
Yeah, I think it was the brother, and then but for some reason I feel like the female cousin weirdly seemed like antagonistic to her, which I don't know.
Well,
it
seems like she's close to the brother. Maybe the brother complaining about her has rubbed off on her, and she's like, being like, I don't know, like, you hurt my baby cousin. Like, she's territorial's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like, she's I don't know. But to be fair, like, there's a decent enough dynamic. Then the third cousin is Bobby, who's the sort of generic jock-looking dude. But he's not like an unlikable character. In fact, I actually think the relationship him and Eric, the tattoo guy, have is oddly kind of sweet as it goes on. Like, they kind of like stick their necks out for each other in weird ways. And I'm like, this is surprisingly endearing for like these two characters, honestly. So, fair play.
Yeah. He kind of looks like a jock, but more like a sweet jock, like not the bully kind of jock, like just more like, oh, he seems like a very nice, innocent kind of guy.
Yeah, he's maybe like a little bit of an idiot, but in like a lovable enough way, you know. And he's allergic to peanuts, which comes up in a few places, so keep that in mind.
And so this kind of has a problem that I feel like, I don't know, it's a complaint you probably make like about a lot of horror movies or whatever, but I don't know, like all these characters are just so like much more interesting and like automatically just have like all these like character traits and stuff that you can latch onto, that I'm like, oh, I want to follow like these guys more than like, you know, Stephanie and Charlie, who are just kind of like, they're just such like typical bland like protagonists.
Yeah, they're the straight man. I think she's better than a lot of other bland straight protagonists, but you are right that she is the straight protagonist amongst more interesting, colorful characters. Like, you're absolutely right on that. I don't think she's as bad as a lot of other like movies, but I get what you're saying.
Like the actress isn't bad at all. Like, you know, I thought she did like a good job. So I'm not saying that it's that. It's just like, oh, probably could have thought of like some more ways to make the character more interesting or whatever. I guess it's kind of a minor thing though, because you know, honestly, it's like, you know, we're here more for the kills and stuff than, you know, it's like I need these like, you know, groundbreaking, you know, character transformations or whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, plot-wise here, she wants to know where the grandmother is. The uncle says, no, leave it. She was a psychotic old lady who was super paranoid, which makes sense because she thought death was chasing her and everyone she cared about. So she is gone, but the auntie that, you know, married into the family, she takes a little bit of sympathy and says, hey, maybe look in this drawer, whatever. And it gives her a location. Turns out this woman, Iris, Stargirl grown up, she's built a fort that she's living in and she never leaves it, which kind of feels like a callback to like at the end of the first movie when Alex like tried to like make a cabin like super safe and whatever. She's kind of done that with this fort that she never leaves.
This kind of made me laugh because it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, the like safest compound imaginable or whatever. But then when they show it, it's just like filled with like spikes and stuff everywhere that I'm like, oh, this looks like the most unsafe place I could think of. Like,
yeah. Well, on the outside, which does, I was like, are you like, do you think Death's sending an army and you have to have like a, like, you know, like castle fortress style defenses?
Yeah, like yeah, what are you trying to protect yourself from? Also, like it's kind of weird to me that it's just like, I don't know, like you can really like get Death, like it's like, I can't get into this thing, it's too impenetrable. But it's like, I don't know, like couldn't Death just start like a forest fire like right outside there?
To be fair, let's just address this now. You can ruin all of these movies easily by saying why can't Death just do this? Because you can say that about every single scene, right? Every single character could be dead in an instant if Death just did it the efficient way. But that's not the fun part of the movie, so
Sure.
So we have to like go along with it. One thing I did really like here though, when she eventually lets her inside, because she's a bit skeptical at first, is I love this idea when she's talking to her and starting to explain things. And obviously the main character, Stephanie, doesn't really believe a lot of it at first and thinks it sounds crazy and whatnot. But when she's talking to her, there's like some of that death build up, right? Where it starts focusing on this rope that's starting to burn, that's holding up like a lantern, and it starts focusing on this other thing in the room. And there's a moment where the old version of Iris just sort of turns and like moves something over to catch the thing in the rope or whatever it is, or she does whatever, and she's like, aha, you son of a bitch, you thought I was distracted because I was talking to her. No, I got you, Death, I know your game. And I was like, this is interesting. I don't think, despite the premise of these movies, I don't know if any character has ever like addressed death like a person quite as much as this woman does.
Yeah.
Where she's like, no, it's an entity that's coming for us. It's not just this force. It's like, it's something that I am personally taunting by calling an idiot. Like, I'm like, you could have almost went a bit further with this.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a nice little touch, and it kind of, like it personifies it. And then I like the idea of, so much of the fun is seeing like the build up and seeing how there's like all these cause and effects that ultimately lead to the death. And it was interesting to see someone actively recognize that and disrupt it.
And catching them, which is something
it's kind of
they kind of add to as well as the movie goes on a little bit in some ways.
I was gonna say, kind of a shame we didn't see her maybe like doing more of it, but
that said though,
still, it was pretty fun.
I do like the balls on her though. Like, she's like, okay, I've not convinced Stephanie this is a real thing and that she has to protect everyone. Okay, I'm just going to prove it. I'm just going to let death get me to prove that this is a real thing. And sure enough, she steps outside the house, and there's obviously a little pause to make it look like it's not going to happen. But immediately, this like, is it like a fire extinguisher, like blasts off and shoots this thing through her face?
Yeah, so I wasn't exactly sure like what happened, because I think earlier when Stephanie goes inside, like, the door slams or whatever, and a fire extinguisher falls on like a plank or whatever,
yes.
And then it happens so fast that I kind of missed it. But I'm guessing, the fire extinguisher goes off and then shoots the plank through her or something like that.
Yeah,
but it was kind of fast.
Yeah, half of her head's missing, and like Stephanie's covered in blood, and it's super shocking. Smash cut to funeral. Everyone's all talking, and the whole other thing here is that Stephanie and Charlie's mum disappeared when they were younger. And she shows up in an RV at the funeral, and everyone's all awkward, and like the uncle is like, "Oh, my sister's back, and coming to the barbecue we're having this afternoon to celebrate grandmother." And she's like, the daughter, Stephanie doesn't want to go. She wants to go and investigate all this death stuff instead. But when we get to the barbecue, that's where a lot of the first real meat of the movie starts, because that's where it starts doing all the. And actually, one thing I really liked is that the first time we met the uncle, who's a pretty likable dude in and of himself, the first time we meet him before he talks to Stephanie in the previous scenes, he was mowing the lawn. So we see him like turn off the lawnmower, and it's like, oh, it set up the lawnmower, but it didn't do it in the scene where it's going to be used. It did it like 3 scenes ago, so that you maybe forgotten about it a little bit. Because this scene does this thing where it's like, okay, a shard of glass gets in the ice, right? So we don't know who, but someone's got a shard of glass in their drink, and it's like, oh god, like, is that going to be and they fake you out, because the Julia, the female cousin, she starts choking at one point, and then she just sort of says, oh, this is like bad or something, spits it out. I can't remember which ingredient she didn't like, but she spits it out, and it's like, okay, you faked me out there. But you also see, and I actually really love this tease, is like a couple of them are jumping on a trampoline, and there's the camera's underneath the trampoline, and you see their feet almost hitting the rake that's underneath the trampoline because it's going down so low. And I'm like, oh, that's a genius little, like, because that's actually kind of like, oh god, that feels awful for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I think what I liked about this particular death is because normally it's like it sets up a bunch of things, and then one thing turns out, or maybe 2 things together turn out to be the cause. I kind of liked at the end of this scene, every single thing they set up played a part in the death of the uncle, because it goes from like, oh, the rake was noticed by the mum, she spotted it and took it out because it was unsafe, but the rake falls down onto the lawnmower, and then the uncle, because he steps on the glass that's been poured out of the glass of ice, he steps in that, falls over, and then the lawnmower gets him in the face. Like, everything kind of comes together to do it. in the end.
Yeah.
Which I really enjoyed the build up of that. And obviously at one point during this, Stephanie realizes they're in danger and she's trying to get there in time to stop everything. And I think she arrives just in time to see the Frankenhooker-esque lawnmower accident, shall we call it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this one was really fun. There was like so many misdirects and like so many instances where like, okay, like this is gonna be it. Oh no, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be it. I thought they did a really good job. One thing I do want to jump back real quick that I thought was kind of funny is when they're at the funeral and the mom's RV pulls up. I think Stephanie says something like, I can't believe like she's like here like after all these years of like abandoning us and now she just wants to pretend like nothing ever happened. I just thought that was weird because it's like, wait, how do you know that's what she wants to do? Like, she hasn't even gotten out of the RV and said anything yet.
That's true. Yeah.
Like it's I don't know. Obviously, it's not like a big deal. It doesn't matter. But it's just like a weird bit of dialogue that I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, let's wait till she actually like gets out and talks to someone first before we start saying like what she's trying to do or whatever. But I don't know. That just weirdly stuck out to me.
Yeah, actually, one of the other things we glossed over, because we mentioned it earlier, but when she went to see Iris, like Stargirl, and Stargirl actually like said, "Hey, here's what actually happened after I had that premonition," and we see her like stop everyone from dancing, and they all believe her the glass is going to break. One of the parts though is that she also knows like somehow the kid throwing the coins a part of it, because she goes over and like grabs the coin and says, "Don't do that," and I'm like. Maybe I missed a moment in the disaster, like premonition, where she saw the coin in some way, but I don't know how she would know the coin had anything to do with like the death. Maybe I missed something there, but I don't know. That felt weird to me.
I mean, no, that's a good point. Like, unless she's like seeing it the same way we're watching it, which would be kind of weird, because like, oh yeah, how would you be able to see stuff that you're not a part of?
Because the camera, like when he throws the coin in the premonition, we follow the coin with the camera into a vent, and then it jams like a fan inside the vent. Like no one could have seen that. Like no one could have known that's where it went.
Yeah, so, that's a good point. Yeah, it's a little weird. Also, I don't know if we mentioned, but then too, like as like Iris dies, or like right before she gives Stephanie like her book, she's like, oh, like study this book, it'll like save your life. So basically, like, she has this like big book, I guess, of all the stuff she's learned about death and it has written down, and now it's like Stephanie's job to kind of read it and stuff. But it made me laugh because it's like, all right, here's this like important book that's gonna be like the key to surviving. But then whenever you look through the book, it's like it's just like nonsense. Like there's like I don't think you could be able to like really get anything out of it. It's just like the like scribblings of a crazy person. Like it's like to me that was just really funny. Like think about like, oh, like how are you gonna interpret this like at all?
Yeah, she has to decipher it all, so it takes a lot of time for her to like actually work out the whole tree thing. So after the uncle dies and they have another funeral, right, and everyone's all morbid, she gets them all together at the house and says, "Hey, look at all this tree I've built of all these deaths. Let me explain how death is coming for us. We're in danger." And they all think, "Oh, this is just, it's a crazy accident. It's, it's this, it's that." They don't really believe her. And they basically think she's turned into the grandmother. So, because, it's like this idea that the grandmother left an impact on her two kids. So that, like, they are recognizing these signs of her going crazy with all these obsessions, and they're really worried about it. So I'm like, okay, it makes sense in this particular case why they'd be, like, the adults would be very alarmed, because to them, they already saw this in a person and they thought it wasn't real. So it makes sense they would think Stephanie's maybe, like, needing professional help here or something. But she explains that, it's going to go in this order, and she's very worried about the tattoo kid. Right. Although I did appreciate though, because I was thinking before she said it, that technically the wife of the uncle and her dad would be safe because they're not part of the family tree. Mm-hmm. Right. They married into the family, so they shouldn't be like on death's hit list. At least not for the same reasons anyway.
And what's kind of funny is they pretty much exit the movie. Yeah. Like it's like, okay, like even if you're not in danger, you think you'd still like hang around the kids to like help them out and like try to protect them or something.
I was just glad they addressed that. I was a little bit worried they were going to like pretend that we're in danger and then like have them realize later or something. So I'm glad that she immediately thought of that and said, no, they're not in danger. They're not part of the bloodline. It's fine.
It is like one of those like kind of cliche things though that like makes me mad in horror movies sometimes, where like instantly no one believes her when it's like you just had like two pretty like crazy unconventional deaths happen. Like I know it's a lot to accept like the theory she's talking about, but at the very least, like, can people acknowledge that, hey, like, two really bizarre things, like, just happened, and they did happen, you know, like, in the order that you're saying?
To give them a little bit of devil's advocate here, in this case, the first death was the crazy old lady at her fortress full of booby traps. And only Stephanie saw it. So I at least get from the perspective of the rest of the family, they're just assuming, oh, that crazy old woman got herself killed. You know, I can at least accept that. So it's just the uncle that's had the weird freak accident. So they don't think there's any risk. Stephanie thinks that the tattoo, cousin Eric, that he's at risk. And this is actually what the teaser trailer was. The first teaser that came out was his, like, not death scene. Because he doesn't die. But
interesting.
Yeah. Well, but obviously in the teaser trailer doesn't tell you that. You just sort of see it, which is actually really cool that was a teaser trailer, because it sets you up thinking, oh, I've already seen this guy's death. So when it turns out after the fact that he's not dead, you're like, wait, what? You swerved me. You swerved me, movie.
That's pretty smart. I actually didn't see the teaser trailer, so but that's interesting to know.
Yeah. And, it's a pretty good Final Destination scene, though. It's this whole thing where he's in the sort of tattoo parlor / piercing place, and his nose ring gets caught in a chain that's going up to the fan that's spinning, and he's trying to unhook it as he's like, it's starting to pull at his nose. But then also this like flammable liquid spills over, a fire starts, and there is a moment where it gets so ridiculous where I did start laughing, where he's kind of dangling between two desks with his legs and trying to unhook this thing as the place is on fire. It's very much the dog sitting in the fire, like, this is fine, kind of like absurd level of like disaster that's happening. And then we cut outside and there's an explosion, and obviously you're left to assume that he died in an explosion in there. And the next day, Stephanie is really worried because she can't contact him, and she was texting him all night saying, are you okay? Are you okay? He eventually blocked her number or muted the phone or whatever. And she's looking around for him. She finds her brother, and she's like, hey, have you seen him? And they're getting kind of worried. But then when they're going over to the cousin's house, they just run into him. He's just there. He's got a little bit of a burn in his arm that he's got a bandage on, but he's fine. And I love this. See the next 10 minutes of this movie? I think it's at its peak. It's like perfection. Not just because it's got some fun Final Destination stuff in it, but because it's playing with things in a different way, where they kind of assume, like, wait, why are you not dead? I mean, we're glad you're not dead, but why aren't you dead? And he kind of says, because it's a bunch of nonsense, I'm not in any danger. And they do the thing, and this was in the full trailer, is he steps out onto the road, and we do he goes, oh, he's going to get hit by a car or a truck or something. And a truck goes past, but it doesn't hit him, it just goes past right behind him. So it gives you the fake out, and you're like, and I did laugh a little bit there. I was like, oh, okay, movie, fair enough. I was going to be annoyed if you did.
Me.
Yeah, if you did the thing from the first movie again, because so many other movies have copied it, I would have been annoyed that you'd just done it again. The fact that you had it almost happen, but not, is funny.
Yeah.
But, and they're walking down the street, and Stephanie's getting paranoid, and she's getting worried about everything that's around him, and he still thinks it's not a real thing. I'm perfectly safe. There's nothing hunting me. And she's like, yeah, but what about all these things? And she's like, what about that tree trimmer? It might fall down. And those kids with the soccer ball, they that might fall into that. And she basically describes this whole scenario where that hits into that, and then that hits you, and then you go into the road or something. And it's very elaborate, and it sounds like a Final Destination thing, but it's obviously not happening. She just sounds crazy. And they keep arguing with the brother, and they run into his sister, the female cousin, and she kind of rolls her eyes at all this as well, and she's going out for a run. And she starts jogging down the street behind them. And as they're talking to Tattoo Cousin, in the background, the exact thing that Stephanie said would happen happens, where the tree trimmer falls, the ball hits her in the head, and it's very funny. She gets hit into the garbage bin, which then the garbage truck lifts up and puts her into the truck. Because there was also a bit here where he was kissing the truck because Stephanie was getting all paranoid and saying, no, don't stay away from the truck, it's dangerous. And he was all kissing it and like being all weird about it. And this all happens just like she said it would, pretty much. And they acknowledge this, and it almost became a plot point where they're like, you have the power to like predict or like see what death's going to do. And this was the thing I was getting at earlier when I said I am surprised they didn't use this more later in the movie, because I thought it was going to be like how she beats death at the end, that she was going to keep seeing all the things that were connecting that were going to kill someone, and she was going to like keep intervening and be like the arch nemesis of death or something. And it never, like, she gets a couple of inklings, don't get me wrong, it's not like she has no kind of like hunchies later on, but it's never this amazingly specific where she calls every part of the chain that leads to someone's death. But obviously, on top of anything else, the female cousin getting hit in the head with a ball and going into the bin is hilarious, and I was cackling with laughter. So good.
Yeah, no, this was definitely like one of the highlights of the movie. It's really funny, and then I love just them willing to commit to just having it in the background like as a joke instead of like focusing on it. It's really funny.
But you still get the gory payoff though when they try to save her, and we see her get crushed in the compactor in the truck. So we get her entire body smushed together, and like Stephanie's trying to pull her out, and she ends up just pulling back an arm. Like, just chef's kiss. I
mean, again, like I know I'm just being like nitpicky here, like because it is a good scene, and like you're not supposed to think about it too much, but like for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why the garbage truck driver like wouldn't stop. Like he like obviously sees these kids like running after him, and then also like
he doesn't know he's got headphones in. They kind of show you that he's not paying attention. He's too busy singing to his song.
But I feel like he like kind of like sees them at some point, but they're like right alongside him. And then also like there should be, if it's garbage day, like
it's garbage day.
Every house.
Sorry, how do you go?
Well, yeah. Like every house should have, on that block should have like their trash cans out. Like you think he'd be stopping at the next one. Like, I don't know. These are complaints that don't matter, but I couldn't help but think about them.
Yeah, you've been a little bit of a funny duddy.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, you're kind of right, but it was too funny and too enjoyable. Like watching her slowly be crushed to death. I wasn't really, worried about complaining about the logistics of it.
Yeah, like I have a lot of stuff like this in the movie where it doesn't necessarily like ruin the scene for me, but I just couldn't help think about like, hey, wait a minute.
I think you just have to get into the movie's wavelength and just be willing to have fun with the stupid, like, logic that leads to the deaths. Because because again, you could ruin this movie at any point by saying, why doesn't death just blow up the house with all of them inside it? Like, done.
Yeah.
So the other swerve here that I thought was quite smart, and I sort of figured it out before it was said, is because they're like, wait, why did it kill her first? Like, the logic said that it would go after Eric first because he's the oldest kid. And then the auntie's like, actually, Eric's, your dad wasn't your father. You're actually, we were having some troubles early in our relationship, and I had an affair, and you've got a different dad. You're not part of the family line. And obviously he's like, wait, what? What the hell, Mom? And keep in mind, right before his almost death at the tattoo parlor, he gave himself a dad tattoo because he was missing his father. So he's getting hit with a lot here. But I thought this was a really funny swerve because it was like, oh, this is actually proving Stephanie right because this is just solidifying. So obviously now that there's been two weird deaths like in back-to-back days, pretty much, they're like, okay, clearly there's something to this. And immediately, Bobby, the other male cousin, he's like, wait, am I next? Wait, it's going to be me now. Oh no! Like, what are we going to do? So it's like, okay, we have to figure out a way to try and deal with this and get into things and so on and so on.
That does beg the question, though. Like, if he's safe from death, why does he still have like that scene in the tattoo parlor? Because it still seems like death is setting up a lot of those things in that scene.
Tim, that's, I mean, the meta reason is because the movies try to trick you, and that's the reason.
Right.
But you kind of just have to read it as, no, it's actually just a freak accident. Like, what happens in there is not death. It is just a freak accident. It just looks a lot like Death's up to stuff, because that's what Death does in these movies.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's a good misdirect. I was quite happy with the reveal that he was alive. And
I love everything about the scene. Like, I thought it was a lot of fun. I just think it's funny being like, well, wait a minute. It seems like Death is still causing it, but it's like, nah, I'll let you live.
yeah, like I said, I think you just have to go in with, like, with these movies, I want them to be a bit silly, and I'm okay with, like, these weird little nitpicky inconsistencies. I don't really care that much. As long as it's fun and as long as the deaths have good build-ups, I'm pretty happy. So the thing that they get to here is that there's like a name in the book that says, JB like met someone who survived, who was able to like trick Death. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a reference to a previous movie. Now, I believe so JB turns out to be Tony Todd, right? William John Bloodworth, right? Fair enough. But the person he's met that survived, I think, is referencing the main character of 2. Because she actually did get her heart stopped and got brought back with a defibrillator and, technically died but came back. So I think she's the one who actually cheated Death definitively, versus everyone else. And every other movie, they've always eventually died. Maybe between movies, maybe not on camera, but like they all died eventually, by the sounds of it.
This is another thing that made me laugh, because, like, again, this book is supposed to be, like, so helpful. It's like their guide to how to survive and like give them clues and stuff. So it just kind of made me laugh that it's like, oh, like, so then why did you just write like JB instead of like the actual person's name, so they could like I would just have like an easier time like looking them up instead of just being like, oh, who's JB? Like, we got to figure it out. And it ends up not being like that hard for them to figure out. But again, that was just something that kind of like made me laugh. I was like, all right, like.
Well, I think you have to think about the context of what the book actually is. Though it wasn't really written for someone else. It was just kind of her taking her own notes, so she knows who it is. And it's only because the granddaughter comes to speak to her and says, hey, I'm having this dream. And she realizes, oh, hey, you need all my notes if you've got any chance of surviving. So she didn't write it for another person. So I think that's, part of it's also she is just a bit old and crazy, because she's been living with this death hunting her whole life. And she's just cooked up in a cabin or whatever. But I think that's part of it, though. It's basically her own notes for herself to understand, and that's why the other characters have to decipher them. She didn't write it as like a help guide. It's not supposed to be, like something that she made with the intention that someone else would just understand everything really easily. So, not that I really care that much, but I do think I could explain that a little bit at least.
Maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. What part of what I just said do you disagree with?
No, I mean, I think she was like, trying to gather all the information she could about like Death and stuff to eventually pass on to her family, because that's like the whole reason why she secluded herself, is because she's trying to protect her family. So I do think that, she probably had some type of inkling that something like this would happen, and that, these notes would be helpful to eventually be passed on to help. But
you may be right. I kind of got the vibe this was just for her own purposes, and then she just realized that this would be helpful. Admittedly, it's a bit more cryptic than it should be, but that's, for movie plot reasons, so that the characters have to figure things out and whatnot.
I mean, yeah, it would also be super boring if you're just looking at like a, very carefully laid out, like, Google Doc or something. Like, I understand that it's a lot more visually entertaining to see all that.
So yeah, they basically track down this name to a hospital, and it's like, okay, we're going to go and see if we can figure out something to save Bobby, because he's next on Death's list. So they're going to take the mum's RV. It's a whole thing. There's a couple of fun bits here. They sort of bring up again that Bobby has a peanut allergy, and because the mum in the RV had made like some peanut butter cookies or something earlier, Eric gets super protective and says, hold on, nut check, like, you made peanut stuff, is there peanuts in there? And she's like, yep, on the counter above the cupboard or whatever. And he goes in, he brings out the jar of peanut butter and like throws it across the lawn or whatever. And then he turns to his brother and says, nut check, and then hits him in the nuts. And that's like mildly amusing, but the bit that got me was Bobby like getting onto the RV and Payne going, "Oh, I get it, it was good." That gave me a little chuckle, but I was like, okay, these two have kind of an amusing relationship because he's very protective of his little brother, but he's also a brother and hits him in the nuts.
I think it's pretty sweet and fun. I think it was earlier on, like at the barbecue when she has, she first brings the cookies and like, oh wait, there's peanut butter in them. There's like a nice bit too where like Bobby like looks like so like scared and he takes like a step back, which I just thought was funny because it's like, well, they're not gonna throw the cookies at you, like relax.
It's also funny just because like of all the things that come to kill them in these movies, the idea that the guy's scared of the peanuts and like is backing away slowly is kind of funny. So yeah, they take this trip to the hospital and they go to the morgue, obviously, which is where JB ends up being, and it's Tony Todd. And this is a scene that a lot of people are going to remember from this movie because it does have that weird meta thing. Apparently, Tony Todd like insisted on being in this movie, like he really wanted to be. He knew he was sick, and like the people making the movie knew he was sick. Like, you know, like his time was clearly like running down when he made this. And he looks, and to be honest, as soon as you see him in the movie, I was like, yeah, I can. He looks like he's, you know, dying. It's just sad. It honestly made me feel sad when I first saw him.
No, I was just about to say the same thing. Like, I'm really glad that they got to put the scene in, and then, you know, he got to have this final send off. And again, it seemed like it was something he was very insistent on doing. So, yeah, I'm like really glad for him. But yeah, it did like, you know, get like an actual like emotional reaction from me. I was like, oh wow, like he looks so sick, and it's like so like it's kind of a weird feeling because like, yeah, I feel so sad seeing him, but also I'm like, oh, I'm happy he at least got to do this, you know.
Yeah, the fact that he wanted to do this, like he was the one insisting on it and wanted to give a send off to the character, and because they give you a little bit of his backstory and connect it to him being in this original disaster, it's like, okay, you've actually given him a bit, you fleshed him out a little bit, which is nice before he goes away. And then you have them like sort of like give them the exposition they need, which is here's the couple of ways that you can cheat death, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. But then he gets up and says, yeah, like after it's done with your family tree, it's going to come for me. But, you know, I've got cancer anyway, so I'm just going to go and enjoy whatever time I've got left. And he basically looks at the camera. He doesn't, but he might as well be, as he just kind of says to everyone, hey, value the time you've got with the people you care about. And it feels like Tony Todd is just breaking character and, like, you know, enjoy the life while you have it, because death eventually comes. So it kind of worked for the character, but also felt like a meta, like real message from Tony Todd.
Oh yeah, I think, I don't know, it might have just been like today too, or maybe like yesterday, but I think they just came out and said too that he actually improvised that last line. So that literally was him, like, yeah, just saying what he wanted to say before he...
Yeah, I said that earlier. I said that the directors told him to go off script and just say what he wanted to say. Like that was
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like he was told, "Hey, just say what you want," and like they kept it in the movie. That last part of it, the take is just Tony Todd speaking to the audience, which is cool. It's like a nice goodbye, because obviously he's a big part of this franchise, but he's also Candyman, and he's been, you know, in other horror things throughout the years. But yeah, so to go from the shock of like seeing him where he looks so skinny compared to what I normally, because Tony Todd, he's got a very specific face and structure, and to see him like this, it's like, oh man, he was in his way out. But knowing that he wanted to do this makes it feel okay for sure. Like this isn't like Donald Pleasance in Halloween 6 where I'm like, you dragged this poor old man into a movie and he's struggling, and I feel bad watching this.
Yeah, honestly, there was like a second where I thought like, oh, like, is this like CGI or something? Because like he looks like so like, yeah, different. Like I just like not used to seeing him that way. That it was pretty shocking. And then I forget, but is this the first time we get like a name for his character too in the movies? I
don't think Bloodworth sounds familiar, so I think we got that before.
Okay,
I think we did hear this before. We might have even had the initials JB before, but okay. I mean, certainly this is the first time that we've gotten the fact that he was in a disaster, like
the backstory,
yeah, and all that. That's all definitely new, but no, this is nice. Yeah, it's hard not to feel something here. It kind of almost weirdly elevates the movie into feeling more important because it's the one where he has his like send off.
Yeah.
even though it's just one little scene. But to be fair, though, he was always just here for 1 or 2 scenes. He was never like a character who was around for like a whole movie or anything like that. So
I feel like he kind of passes it in a way, since like there's no face to death or whatever. He was kind of like the face of the franchise, but I do think we kind of get a new face by the end of it.
We do?
I think so.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, I'm excited to get to the ending then. But
I also did think it was kind of funny when they just walk into the autopsy room and there's just like a guy performing an autopsy. He's like, hello?
That was funny, yeah.
Just like, they're like, we're here for like JB. He's like, what?
Again, that's them poking fun at the franchise tropes, but like, because there's been multiple movies where they go to a morgue to talk to Tony Todd, but here this regular mortician is just like, why is there random people walking into my morgue? I've got a body here that I'm cutting open. What's going on?
I'm sure, like, legally, you probably like can't just have people like walking in like civilians when you're like cutting someone open.
I would assume so. It's a hygiene issue as well, if nothing else. I have to imagine. Yeah. So yeah, basically the 2 brothers though walk off, and the 2 things they're told is that either you kill someone and you get the time they've got left, which was kind of in 5, although I think when it was in 5, it was more you have to kill someone else in the queue and you get their time, whereas here it's more just, if you just kill anyone, you get all their time, which I did actually like the little joke payoff to this, where they're like, well, we can't kill someone, right? I mean, we get the time they've got left, and then they look over and they're next to like all the babies in the hospital, and they just kind of look over for a bit, clearly thinking, well, that would be the most amount of time we could get, assuming these babies live long, healthy lives. And they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't. I got a little chuckle out of that. So that's good. And then the other thing, of course, they told them, which is from 2 specifically, is that you have to die and come back, and that will cheat death, because you've actually died and you've been resuscitated, and that'll bring you back. So this is where they start concocting their plan, where he's like, bro, I need to kill you, and I'll bring you back. And it just so happens you've got a deadly peanut butter allergy, or peanut allergy, not butter specifically. So let's do that. And he's a little hesitant, of course, but they concoct this plan, separate from the others who are trying to find them, to try and kill him with peanuts so they can bring him back. And he takes his EpiPen, and there's a whole bit where he can't get something out the vending machine. Like, he picks the peanut butter, because Eric gets him like just regular unsalted peanuts, and he's like, dude, if I'm going to die with some peanuts, at least give me one of the fun ones. Like, I'll have the peanut butter cups. But there's a whole bit here where Eric's like trying to get them out the vending machine, and he's like angling it over, and it's almost like in the path of where Bobby's standing, and I'm like, are you trying to get him killed? Like, I mean, you are actually technically trying to get him killed, but in a way that you can bring him back. I feel like you're almost going to crush him with the vending machine if things go awry here.
Yeah, like, you'd think, knowing what they know, that they wouldn't like put extra risk in what they're doing, but it's played for like comedic effect, obviously, so it works. But yeah, I was like thinking the same thing, like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah, he also steals a wheelchair, so he's got a way to wheel him. He's like, hey, we're in a hospital, I'll just take you to the emergency room down the hall, and they'll bring you back, it'll be fine.
It's not a bad plan. Like, if you're gonna do it, it might as well be like, at a hospital where they can just instantly revive you. Yeah,
so they sneak into a room that happens to have an MRI machine in it, which is important, because Death turns the machine on, right? With things. It also, at one point, it goes out of its way to show that it needs like another button pressed, and then like Death somehow has something hit it. So it's like, okay, now the MRI machine's turning on. While they're doing their peanut allergy attempted death, but the actual death ends up being there's 2 parts to it, because Eric does die here, and the way they explain this when he wasn't supposed to die is that because they were actively trying to cheat Death, like, he became fair game, right? I think they say Death, like, if you try and cheat Death or mess with Death, it'll get messy, and that's the explanation for him also dying. But they both die here. First of all, Bobby dies because the spring from the vending machine gets magnetized and gets him in the head. when he's already dying from the peanuts, to be fair, but he gets gets skewered in the head with the vending machine thing.
But I believe that's after Eric, because Eric goes first.
Does
right?
Eric go first?
I thought so, because I think
Maybe right. Yeah, it's been a couple of days.
Yeah, because basically the MRI machine turns on, and again, not to be like too nitpicky, but like I'm like, okay, I know they have like powerful magnets or whatever, but like I don't know, like surely they have like stuff flying from the other rooms. I'm like, is it really like that? Like I don't know, that just seems very unsafe or whatever. But again, it's still like a
Tim, are you hearing yourself talking? That seems unsafe. You're watching a Final Destination movie.
I'm just saying, I don't know. I think it's fun to point the stuff out. I mean, because I still enjoy it, but I'm not gonna lie, it's like I'm not thinking about it. But obviously, yeah, everything's being magnetized, and since he has all the piercings, you can see like the stuff start getting ripped from him, and then there's some pretty funny stuff where it's like you get the obvious things like with like his nose and earrings, but then you see like his shirt is like with his nipples, and then obviously like his pants start to go. Yeah, but then he basically gets like
the reveal being, of course, that his dick's pierced, so you don't see his dick obviously, but you just see like it almost looks like he's getting a hard on basically, but it's like because the metal in his dick is like being pulled towards the MRI machine.
But it's kind of funny too, and again, I guess like we kind of don't really see. Well, I guess we had it a couple of times, but like usually it's just like one person getting killed, but it's kind of like fun. I guess it's happened a couple other times because it would have been like that tanning bed kill in the previous movie. But like it's fun seeing the two people like kind of in danger at the same time. Like he's getting sucked into the MRI machine, and then Bobby's dying from the peanuts, and then I think he.
It just actually. Just to jump in here, when Eric, a tattoo guy, gets sucked into the MRI, he goes like face first, and his body kind of folds inwards to it, so it's like his back's bending backwards, just to sort of give you a visual of like how over the top it is.
Yeah, and then basically, I think Bobby does get his like EpiPen like at the last second, but then like you said, like it's too late because the spring that got jostled from the vending machine gets sucked into the MRI as well, and then like goes into his head.
Yeah, so he gets snuffed. and to be perfectly honest, this is the end of just the good movie, right? I think after this is where it kind of slides into just third act, whatever. Not that there's nothing to enjoy. I do think the last couple of minutes are quite funny, but the actual rest of the plot is just kind of whatever.
Yeah. Sorry. One other quick thing I wanted to mention that made me laugh. Is when like Stephanie and them are looking for them in the hospital. She's like looking through the book, and she says something like like, oh man, there's so many different ways like to die in the hospital. And then it just made me wonder, like, wait, is the book just filled with like different ways that you can die in different places? Because like I thought the book like had a lot more like insightful stuff to it, but then it just kind of made me laugh thinking like, oh no, it's just like, hey, if you go to a hospital, beware because this thing could kill you, or this thing, or this thing, or that thing. So I just thought that was kind of funny. And then
yeah, well, I think it's more the idea that there's because she's got all these clippings of all these deaths, so there's just a bunch of them from a hospital. I don't think it's literally here's a list of all the ways that you can die in a hospital. There's like a hospital section where there's just like, here's how this person died in like the operating room. Here's how this person died when a stretcher like impaled them against a wall. I don't know. Like, take your pick.
And then also important for later that because in the book they show that they have the penny from the that she took from that ginger kid from the beginning.
I don't think he was ginger, was he?
Yeah, he's redhead. Pretty sure.
I don't remember him being a redhead. I mean, I'm happy to blame gingers for things, Tim, but I don't remember him being a redhead.
I'm pretty sure. But hey, I could also be wrong. But the penny falls, and then this stupid old lady picks it up, and it's kind of funny because I kind of called what was going to happen with the penny in the end at this point, just because like they.
Are you saying that Abraham Lincoln's the new face of death?
No, but that would be funny. But but like, as soon as like she picked it up, I was like, oh, like that penny is definitely going in a train track, because I feel like we kept having these shots of like the train like going through this town or whatever, and I'm like, well, clearly that's gonna set like something up. And then just the fact that like we're doing this whole big thing with this penny, I was like, oh, okay, they're playing the long game here, which I can appreciate. But yeah, they kind of have a plan where they're like, oh, basically we gotta put the mom back in the cabin so she can be safe and miserable, and we can live our lives.
Yeah, the logic here is that if the mum's in the cabin avoiding death like the grandmother was, then death will never go after her kids. Well, except eventually it will, because she'll die of old age at some point. So eventually the kids are going to have to deal with it. But at least for a few decades, at least, hopefully she can like fend off death and keep the rest of the line safe. So that's their plan. And I think it's when they're leaving the hospital, we get the callback to 2, where the truck with the logs drives past and almost hits them. Mm-hmm. And they kind of freak out, and it's like, oh, logs. Oh, they're teasing us here with those. And they do come back in a way at the end, but they it's like they know that the logs are such a favorite death for fans that they kept teasing them. Like, here's the logs going past on the truck.
Yeah, and then pretty quickly after the mom dies, I forget how she died though. Is like at the hospital, right?
No. So they get in the cabin and they're almost there, but the RV like ends up in a ditch, and like there's like I don't know, stuff's going on and stuff's falling down. Like there's fire starting, electrical wires dangling, whatever. But basically there's an explosion.
It's like right outside the cabin,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Like right before she gets in. Oh, okay, yeah.
Right. So there's an explosion that does kind of send them all back, and the mom ends up surviving, but she's got like a sort of Two-Face style burn like down the side of her, but she's able to like save her daughter or whatever in the moment. And just as she's like saying something like loving or like, you know, important, that we're doing a big dramatic beat with her talking to her daughter, and her daughter's been mad at her the whole movie for abandoning her, blah 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 blah. We basically get a funny death where like it's like the telephone pole or something just comes down and crushes her in like an instant, and she just dies, which I actually really appreciated, just because probably the weakest part of the movie is like the whole, the mum abandoned us, I don't really want to talk to her. Like that relationship thing is probably the driest part of the human story. I think having the death,
I didn't care for that at all.
Yeah, having the death of that be a funny, like, sort of, oh, shut up, just like get on with it. That did make me laugh a little bit. It's not enough to save this whole third act bit where, you know, her being trapped in the RV and the water's coming in and she's trying to cut the seatbelt to get out. That stuff is just kind of whatever. I didn't really feel a whole lot for that, and it felt like it was over quite quickly as well, I will say.
It was kind of just like, we just gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, the way it ends is she ends up in underwater for a while, and the brother has to like bring her back with CPR, right? And this is kind of feeding into the whole, if you die and come back, like that'll count as cheating death. So they basically win, and I was like, oh wait, that easy? But of course, it's a Final Destination movie, right? So you have to have that last bit where they're like, oh no, death's still after us. We thought we escaped, but we didn't. I actually do like this final scene and how it sets it up, because I love kind of the playing with it and the funniness of it. Is they're going, like, I think the little brother's going to like pick up his date for prom, right? And like the sister and the dad go with them, and it's a whole thing. It was set up at the start that he was going to prom with some girl he likes. And they meet the dad of the girl, I think it is. And they go, oh yeah, these kids have been through a lot recently. He's like, my son saved my daughter's life. He gave her CPR and like saved her. It was a whole miracle.
Brought her back from the dead.
Right? Yeah, they say, oh yeah, she died and came back. And this guy's like, and they're like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he's like, well, technically, like, her heart never stopped. If you were able to bring her back with just CPR, then she didn't actually ever die, right? And they kind of look at each other like, wait, what? Would that not have counted? And it kind of, you think back to Final Destination 2 and you're like, oh yeah, because in that movie, her heart did stop, I think. And they brought her back with a defibrillator. They had to actually, because I was thinking that when they were explaining this, I'm like, oh, you need a defibrillator or something. You need to like jolt them back to life. And they're like, shit, that didn't count. And as you say, when this is playing out, we get the penny from the old lady that ends up landing on the train track. So the end of the movie is the train derails in spectacular fashion. The two main characters, the brother and sister, are running from the chaos coming towards them. And two logs that are on part of the train, just like the truck would have the logs stacked, come flying towards them and hit them and smush them in the ground very quickly in quick succession. Like boom, boom, they're both dead. Cut to title. The humor of this reminded me a lot of the barbecue death at the end of Final Destination 2, which I really appreciated, because that's out of all of the end of the movie, oh, death's still coming for you bits, this and 2 are my favorite because they're funny. I don't like when they play it as a serious reveal. Like, see at the end of 3 when they're all in the subway train and they're like, oh no, death's still coming for us. I'm like, shut, I don't care. Like, obviously it's still coming for you. We've done this already. So at least be funny. Be funny with it. Be playful. Be funny. Don't take it seriously, because obviously that's still coming from. Because you always do it.
I don't know if I really like this that much. Like I do agree that like I like it being more playful and played for laughs. I think the thing that gets me is I don't really need the callback, to the other movie. Like, I was like, yeah, we get it. Like, we all love the logs. And this is what I was kind of referring to lately, is I do feel like the logs are like the new face of the movie.
I see. All right.
Okay. It's like, okay, so, yeah, and, like, I think this one's doing really well, so we'll probably get another one. But I feel like, okay, if we can't get Tony Todd to make more appearances, then we're just going to have, like, logs in every movie. That would be like...
You say doing really well. I'm pretty sure it's made more money than any of the other ones. Like, it's by far the most successful in the franchise, so I think we're definitely getting number 7.
Yeah, and I'm here for it. Like, like you said, like, this is a premise that doesn't really get old, so it's like, I welcome it, but I don't need like the constant callbacks. And maybe it wouldn't have been as bad if, like you said, they kind of teased it earlier, but I don't know, maybe that was just like one too much for me. But it's not like it like ruined it for me or anything, but it's just like, I don't know if I needed that.
I don't think it's that callback heavy. Like the connections to the previous ones are very sly, or very slight, maybe is a better word. Like, there's not a lot. Like, the logs are the biggest one, right? The logs, tease, and then the death at the end are the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that the movie in general was super callback heavy. I'm just saying that the logs themselves are like such an obvious callback that I'm saying, like, I don't really need that in particular.
Sure.
But
yeah, I mean,
maybe it's just me.
I don't know. I think, like, I'm quite positive here because, like, it has the faults that I expect a Final Destination movie to have. I think they're all guilty of it to some extent, some more than others. It is kind of maybe because the end of 2, when it does its funny quick death at the end, it's not the main characters. The main characters did kind of like survive, and there's kind of like a new branch that Death's going after. So it's like a funny death that's like not the main guys. It is kind of funny in this one though that it's taking itself a little bit more seriously with some of the main characters. To kill them off in a jokey way at the end is kind of like almost extra ballsy in a weird way, but I kind of appreciate them doing that. But I don't know, like, kind of like in the same way that you like, more slasher sequels to just be better, or more kills, fun kills, whatever. I feel the same way about Final Destination. Just don't take it too seriously and give me enjoyable kills. I could have used one more in Act 3 that lived up to the rest of them. That would be the one thing I think I would have wanted to like flesh, or not even flesh things out, just even things out across the movie, and maybe tighten it up by 10 minutes. But I think even when it's taking itself a bit more seriously, it's better than probably any of the other taking themselves seriously ones. Like, I think this family of characters
Sure.
is better than the group in the first movie. It's better than the group in the third movie, which are the two that I think of as taking themselves too seriously. And then it still does have that fun sense of humor that I like in this franchise. So I mostly had a good time. It just never escapes that curse of the third act is inherently just much less interesting than the rest of the movie. But I think 4 circumvented it a little bit by having another big premonition at the end that rewound. So I guess maybe that got away from it a touch.
That's right.
But
yeah.
Again, the internet hates that one, so maybe I shouldn't be complimenting it.
Yeah. I mean, again, it sounds like some of the stuff worked or didn't work to various degrees for us, but I mean, I pretty much have like the same issues as you're just saying there. Like for me, it was like I had a fun time, and there's stuff that's enjoyable about it, but Yeah, like you said, I think it was just slightly too long, and then yeah, I felt kind of a disconnect when it was trying to take itself a bit more seriously. And then yeah, the third act just wasn't the best. But I mean, other than that though, I think there is, like a decent amount to, enjoy. Like I said at the beginning, it's kind of I think kind of a mixed bag, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not enjoyable or like not worth seeing. Like I still had a good time.
But I think I'm coming across more positive in that, because to me this is like, it couldn't have been that much better, really. Like I guess I just like I say, it's going back to sort of like the expectations of what this movie can be. I wouldn't call this a mixed bag in the context of being a Final Destination movie. Obviously, yes, if you compare it to, I don't know, Halloween and like The Shining, yes, obviously it's a mixed bag. But I think in the context of a Final Destination sequel, I think this delivered about most of what I wanted. And if it went above this, it would have been exceeding expectations and given me something, something so special that it would have been redefining like what the franchise could do. And I don't need it to do that. Like I'm fine with just fun sequels with good deaths for the most part.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I think if you like these movies, I think you'll get some to enjoy in this. Maybe just a little bit of tightening, and if they can solve that third act problem with one of the ones coming up, that'd be cool. But we'll see. And hey, look at this way, we will have an all new cast because no one survived this one. Yep. So 7 will be something different. And while I do like the idea of doing these in different time periods, I will say that the budget would inflate significantly if you have to do like a period piece or something set in the future.
Sure.
As fun as that would be, so that may be why they never do it. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that would be, like, eventually if they get to that point, like, Final Destination in space would be really fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just call it Final Destination X. Just continue the lineage. Yeah. I want that to be the thing. All horror franchises, when they do the space one now, should call it whatever the name is, X.
X, yeah. No, I agree.
That should be the thing. Sorry, Leprechaun, you missed the boat by being too shit and too early.
I will say that this is probably got to be like the best Bloodlines we've gotten, right? Like,
well, what's the other options? Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, yeah. I don't know, like Bloodlines. I feel like there's like, I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but I feel like that's a subtitle that gets used a lot. But it was actually justified here. Like it made sense.
Oh yeah, it was definitely, it played into the plot for sure. It's funny because we'd done that thing in Patreon a few times on even more streams where we did like the best 2s, like best 3s, top 5 4s. I don't think we got to. I think 5s might have been the last one we did. But I do think that if we do get around to doing like top 5 number 6s of horror franchises, this is probably making that list now.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not saying it beats Jason Lives by any means, but it beats Halloween 6.
No.
Nightmare on Elm Street 6.
Yeah, for sure. Saw 6.
Oh yeah, it's definitely beating that. The next Evil Dead that comes out will be Evil Dead 6, technically, so maybe once that comes out, we can do the top 5 6s.
I believe that'll be Evil Dead Burn, which I think is next year, which is exciting.
Yeah, here's hoping the streak of good Evil Dead movies exists, because there's no bad ones yet.
Not yet, no.
I'll maintain it, there's no bad ones, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, Tim, what are you rating Final Destination Bloodlines out of 10?
So I do think that, like, overall, I would say I enjoyed it. I did have fun. Obviously, we're here for the kills, and there's a lot of fun set pieces. Not to repeat myself too much, but they do tend to be a bit CGI, which deflates it a bit for me. But again, like we said, like there's no like a lot of the stuff, there's no way you can really do it practically. So it's I'd rather have them be a little CGI, but still be kind of like fun and crazy than trying to do like more tame kind of stuff. So whatever. But there's just like some minor like stuff here and there, like again, just like being like a bit long, and then like some of the family drama stuff, and then some of the characters being like a bit boring and blah blah blah. But I mean, all that stuff like doesn't make it a terrible movie, but I don't know, it just kind of maybe makes it like going from something like great to just being like okay or good. So I think I'm gonna give it just like slightly below a 7, and I'll go like the 6.5, which I don't know. I don't know if that sounds like harsh. It does seem like people maybe are a little higher on it than me. So I don't know if I'm just being a Debbie Downer. I didn't hate it by any means, but yeah, I think there's still a lot of stuff to like. But I think that's about where I'm landing.
Yeah, what do I want to put it? I think I'm a little bit higher than you. I don't think I'm going that much higher though. I think like rating wise, you're not that far off. I think you just have like your tone feels a bit more negative, I guess, when you're talking about it. But
to be fair, it's been a rough couple of days. I'm not in the best mood, but
because I think I'm probably just going to go with a nice solid 7 out of 10. Like I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good sequel to Final Destination, and there's a lot of fun to be had here. Some faults, but I had a good time. Like I felt I was in a good mood when I left the theater. I was like, oh, that was a fun ride. Night and day between this and Until Dawn that we went to go see a couple of weeks ago. So, it had me in a good mood. It gave me what I wanted from a Final Destination movie. And I think as long as you have the right expectations of a Final Destination movie, this won't be too disappointing. If anything, I mean, I've seen people on the internet saying it's the best one, and I wouldn't quite go that far, but I can see why you would like it the most. So, I am quite happy with it. And if we get more sequels at this quality, and again, I think this is probably maybe the second or third best one, I'm not going to be complaining. Like, I'm happy for it to be at this level. That said, if they solve the Act 3 curse, then obviously that's a great win, but I'm not expecting it at this point because no one's been able to do it, really. So,
yeah.
There you go. That's the show. Obviously, we did plan on this being out last week, but we had to delay a couple of days, and I put out Oddity instead, which we already had in the tank. So apologies, this was a week later. Nothing we could really do about it, but hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on Final Destination. Next week, unless something's in the theater, which it might be, because it feels like every other week right now, there's like another horror movie out that Tim says, hey, I'm going to go see this. But in theory, next up should be The Strangers Chapter 1, as we get close to finally being done with 2024, but that's the plan anyway. Okay, well, that is the show, everyone. Obviously, you can support the show and help keep it coming over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get bonus episodes, which we're almost kind of back to doing those once a month. Doing as best we can anyway. Obviously, it'll probably be a little rough again when Tim's actually moving house. Probably not for too long, but like there might be like a weird month there in a couple of months. But as it is, things are getting kind of consistent on that front again. We've been kind of consistent with the episodes, so we'll be back soon. So there's a whole back catalogue now of bonus episodes on Patreon or via YouTube membership if you'd rather support us that way. Any support from any direction is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. And we did, as part of this review, also record a little top 3 deaths in the movie and ranked the openings like disasters, which is a little bonus thing on Patreon as well. So go check out all that stuff. But that is the show. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.